Yo, man, look at this set one. Look at this beautiful set one.
Go. Minus 10. Let's go.
Yo, man, don't. No. I'm ripping the youngest SP.
Hey there, guys. This is Alphonsus D, Team Iron Man 12. Here we are, set 5. Finally here.
They were giving away a raffle of set 6.
And this is one of my favorite sets of all time. I bought a box of BT14.
One set 16 bucks.
The first generation Stride booster set 1.
Of the new set Demonic Advent.
Ultimate Stride, V19 Q4. Divine, Lighting, Radiance, Clan Selection Volume 2.
The game of Vanguard has certainly come a long way from its small start 10 years ago. And with Overdress coming around the corner for the global side of the game, it seems as though interest for Vanguard is at an all-time high. And with good reason. Adding in new mechanics such as the ride deck to help prevent Gradelock, as well as taking the overabundant amount of clans and just merging them down into 5 nations. Steps like these seem like healthy steps forward for the game for the long run. This idea of now being able to play with different aspects and playstyles of different clans and having the ability to merge them into one deck really helps build and evolve in the complexity for deck building as a whole. But believe it or not, this is not the first time Bushiroad has done something like this. All the way back when Cardfight Vanguard originally released, you did not have the abundance of clans that we have today. Believe it or not, the game originally started out with just 10 clans, and out of those 10 clans, only 4 of them had enough to make a fully functional and viable deck. However, that really wasn't a problem back then. You could actually combine cards from different clans and play a mixture of whatever you wanted, allowing this sense of flexibility when it came to deck building. You could mix Oracle Think Tank with Nubatama, Mega Colony with Nova Grapplers, Royal Paladins, and Grand Blue, and the list goes on. Now, why am I telling you all of this? Well, that's exactly how I was able to build my first competitive deck. A deck that really doesn't get that much attention, and a deck that I still consider to be one of my favorite decks, even to this day. A deck simply called Mr. Overlord.
Cardfight Vanguard, Aichi Sendo's Blaster Blade, Toshiki Kai's Dragonic Overlord. Which deck will you choose? Cardfight Vanguard.
Like probably a lot of other people, I began my interest in Cardfight Vanguard after watching the first few episodes of the original anime. I still remember scrolling through the internet and learning that my local card store at the time was just starting to sell the trial decks. Me and my friend at the time rushed over and immediately bought both starter decks. He decided to purchase Blaster Blade, and I decided to buy Dragonic Overlord. Kagero to me just looked really cool. The dragons as well as the overall aesthetic were really appealing to me. Not only that, but the character who used the clan in the anime, Toshiki Kai, was probably my favorite character from the entire series. Needless to say, I felt a pretty strong connection with the deck, and it has been my main clan ever since. I can still recall rushing back home with my friend and playing for what seemed to be hours with just our trial decks. And though we did have a blast, at the time, no one else we knew in our area played Vanguard, let alone any type of trading card game. So we started slowly losing interest altogether. It was only after I started going to university and seeing people playing Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! That I saw a small group of people playing Vanguard. I rushed home and got my trial deck, and I was ready to take some games and take some names. Little did I know, the decks they had were fully updated and competitive. I'm talking about triple rares, perfect guards, the whole 9 yards. And needless to say, well, I got my butt handed to me. When I asked if there was any way I could improve my deck, one of the guys told me about a deck that was showing some very good results overseas that involved mixing 2 clans together. When I asked what it was called, he jokingly just called it Mr. Overlord.
この世の全てのものを焼き尽くす特殊力の炎ドラゴニックオーバーロード
Now, what was this deck, you might be asking? Well, to put it simply, Mr. Overlord was a amalgamation of a deck that combined cards from both Nova Grappler clan and the Kagero clan. As the name itself states, the deck focused on using two main cards for your win condition, Mr. Invincible and Dragonic Overlord. Dragonic Overlord, even back at the time of Vanguard's initial release, was still a very powerful card. Having the ability to knock out key interceptors while being a large beatstick due to its inherent plus 5k ability meant you had the ability to apply more pressure onto your opponent and drain large amounts of shield resources from their hand. Its drawback? While it did deal with problematic cards, it could also easily be shut down with a perfect guard, and in order to activate the skill, you would need to pay 3 whole counterblasts, which is a large cost to pay for a skill, even back in the early days. While this card did have a large payoff, there was a great amount of risk for the Overlord players, leaving you with little to no resource to rebuttal on the following turns. So, in order to fix this problem, there needed to be a consistent way to refund your counterblasts, while at the same time having ways to pressure your opponent to use their perfect guards, which seemed to be near impossible if we're playing just with a Kagero deck. Enter Mr. Invincible. Mr. Invincible was a grade 3 Nova Grappler card with the ability that if he hit, you could Counterblast 5 and Soul Blast 8 to be able to restand your entire board. Not only that, but his Soul Charge effect allowed you to countercharge at the start of each of your turns, and in combinations with cards such as Hungry Dumpty and Claydol Mechanic, made the ability to pay for Dragonic Overlord's effect much more feasible. And if that wasn't enough, because you played cards from both clans, meant you could be a lot more flexible with trigger selection in your deck. Keep in mind that back in the day, if you wanted to play with clans with different trigger types, the only limitation was you needed a representative of the clan on your board at the time of your trigger's activation. And because of that, it allowed for lineups such as 12 crit and 4 heal, before that was even a feasible thing to do for just one clan by itself. Slapping cards like Flame of Hope Airmo and Dragonmon Gojo to help filter out your combo pieces, and beatsticks like Brutal Jack, you had a hyper-consistent and offensive deck that could deal large amounts of pressure to your opponent. Needless to say, the deck was a powerhouse, able to go toe-to-toe with decks like Alfred Beats, which was argued to be one of the strongest decks at the time. And the kicker? The deck was very budget-friendly, consisting of only a few commons and rares from the first booster set, as well as just one trial deck. The deck seemed to have everything going for it, and with the ability to mix clans meant there was even more room for growth, allowing people to mess around with cards like stand triggers, like Battle Riser, and even cards like Lozenge Mages, which people used along with other OTT cards to be able to form a recyclable heal trigger. It seemed like this deck had limitless potential. Sadly though, the deck only had a short time in the spotlight. As with the release of the very next booster set, Onslaught of the Dragon Souls, the deck had a hard time keeping up with decks such as Alfred Beats, now having the ability to incorporate the Soul Saver engine, as well as decks such as the Blazing Flare and Aleph Superior Ride deck, taking the forefront for the meta. Granted, the deck was able to evolve a bit with the addition of Red Lightning, allowing for another form of countercharge. It sadly was not able to keep up with the pace of the meta, and we shifted down to a tier 2 deck, before completely falling out of obscurity. To this day though, I still have fond memories of taking this deck to my locals, laughing and having a good time and just taking people by surprise with the sheer aggression and how the deck was able to perform. Overall, this experience has reminded me that While Vanguard is an ever-evolving card game, at its root has always been a game about creativity. A game about pulling off crazy combos with cards that seem like they would not work together on paper, but in practice blows everyone's expectations away. A game where even though all might seem lost, it can easily be turned around at the turn of a dime. But most importantly, Vanguard is a game about experiences. Going to new and different places, meeting and making new friends along the way. All under our same love and respect for this game. And with Vanguard's latest chapter, hopefully this can encourage a new generation of Vanguard players to go out, make new memories, and even find a Mr. Overlord of their own.